Welcome, everyone. This is the August 8th meetup of the Coast Division, our virtual Saturday meetup. Today, we only have a couple of items, and then we'll get into our general modeling on the coast discussion. First is Memoriam Frank Markovich. We'll talk a little bit about that. Frank obviously had a lot of impact on all of us. Then we got a little bit of an NMRA convention review. I've got a couple of videos that I put together actually for New Tracks, which is the Wednesday night thing that I do that does the scholarships, and we'll do those. Look at those. One is of the vendors at the convention, and one is of the modular layouts that were at the National Train Show. Actually, both at the National Train Show, and then we'll just get into modeling on the coast. So first tonight, or this morning actually, wanted to just recognize that we lost both an amazing model railroader and actually a long-term NMRA-PCR leader in Frank Markovich. Frank succumbed after a short illness. Frank was a long-term coast member, lived in Belmont. Great model railroader, very much interested in the west side and logging, had a logging layout underneath his house. He actually used the room, interestingly enough. He taught music, and he actually had his music students come in, and they would do their music lessons in the middle of his layout underneath the house. So it was very cool. He was a great mentor and teacher. The first clinic I went to when I joined the NMRA was Frank doing a clinic on weathering, and I have to say I learned some great weathering techniques from him. He was a leader in the PCR. He was coast superintendent. He was a director. He was PCR president. And he also built the demonstration layout for the NMRA museum up at the California State Railroad Museum. He and Frank Blumenstadt built the layout that's there that basically shows the layers of a layout from bench work through basic scenery up to a completed layout. And they did that with available products to show that anyone can build a layout. You don't have to start as a master model railroader, but a new beginner in the hobby can actually start building a layout right away. His modeling skills, he was MMR number 514, so he's one of our PCR Coast Division MMRs. And also he, for a number of years, managed the West Side Reunion, which is an annual event that happens typically in the late winter, early spring, and I think about the April timeframe, and is up and really celebrates the West Side Lumber Company, which obviously ran a very interesting railroad. So, I thought what we'd do is just pause for a moment. Personally, Frank had a great impact on me because I dealt with him a lot when I became superintendent of the Coast Division, helped me out. Anyone else have any comments about Frank they'd like to make before we move on?
Sure, Phil, I'll make some comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Frank was, I really didn't get to know him until I started to work on my MMR. I knew about him, I've talked to him before, but otherwise the personal relationship kind of got developed over a 2.5 year period with that. So Frank, he and Earl were involved with reviewing everything I did that got merit awards, working toward the MMR, and they offered a lot of really good feedback on things I'd already done, and that feedback helped the models I still had to build in order to finish up the regimen there be much better models. And Frank was just a fun guy to talk to anyway. We could talk about music, we could talk about model railroading, West Side Lumber Company, live kids, and he was just an all around good guy.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it's very unfortunate. It seems this year has been at least the first half of this year has been an incredible challenge in terms of the number of folks we've lost, and that
Mhm.
that kind of seems to continue. So my understanding is that we will get some information from Susie, Frank's wife, about when a service will happen Not sure whether it'll be up, towards Modesto way or up in that area. I think was where he was located, or back in Belmont, because I know he was very active in his church in Belmont. So I'm not sure if there'll be something at one or two or exactly what will happen there. But most of the family is up
Mhm.
in the foothills in the Sierras. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's very unfortunate. It seems like there's a reflection of our aging membership that happens in seeing the number of members we've lost, from Doug Smith to Bob Brown to Bob Ferguson, et cetera. So it's been a rough year so far. Hopefully, it will not continue for the rest of the year. I definitely don't want to be doing another one of these. So everybody, that means you have to stay healthy for at least the rest of the year. So what? Yeah, go ahead, Ken. Anyway, with that, I think we'll go ahead and continue on, and you'll get an update in the Coast Extra about anything further about Frank, and when there might be a service. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next topic, which is a little interesting topic, which is the NMRA convention and the National Train Show. So I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Chattanooga and see the NMRA convention and the National Train Show. It was interesting enough. This was a great convention. It really, I think, began a bit of, hopefully, a change in kind of arc of the convention. As many of you know, the NMRA convention,
Yeah.
if you go back 10 or 15 years, had 2,000 attendees or more. So it really was a very large event every year, and a big consequential part of the model railroading community. That's actually fallen off, and was then further exacerbated by COVID, and attendance had dropped to around 1,000. I think when you got to Novi last year, the attendance was actually limited to just over 1,000, based on the venue size they chose because of the previous conventions. This convention had 1,430 registrations. I think that's a combination of being a great convention, and of course the physical location, Chattanooga. I didn't really realize till I went and looked at a map that Chattanooga is in the far eastern end of Tennessee. It's not that far from Atlanta. It's fairly close to Washington, D.C., and by extension to the whole eastern metropolitan area, all the way up to New York. So it's fairly easy to get from those places down to the convention. So I had lots of registrations. It was a great convention, very good clinics, reasonable layout tours. One of the challenges in Chattanooga, quite frankly, is while they do have some number of basements, they don't have that lousy winter weather that's essential for great model railroading. Though at least one modeler told me that the lousy summer weather, hot and humid, actually kept you in the basement as well. So, but I actually filmed some layout visits. I do this for New Tracks, so hopefully we'll be able to see some of those on some of our Saturday meetups going forward. There was one exciting announcement, which is the modular AP certificate. That is actually the first new AP certificate, I believe, since 1986 or 96. I think it was like 86. So, the MMR and the AP program were established many years ago in the NMRA, really, as Dave said, for two reasons. One, to recognize model railroaders who had demonstrated skill and capability across a number of areas of model railroading, but also to really help people build better models. I mean, if you've ever done, either been put your models into a contest, or more importantly, been a contest judge, which I would encourage everyone to take the opportunity to do if you can. All of the AP evaluations of models are designed around two concepts: how complex is the model, and how well done is the model within the complexity. So, If you have an incredibly complex model and you do it fairly well, you'll get a reasonable score. If you've got a not complex model and you do it almost perfectly, you may get exactly the same score. So, one of the things with the AP certificate is it's really a way to improve your modeling and understand what you could do to build a better model that more closely emulates the real world. So the exciting thing is, for the first time since the 80s or 90s, but literally for 25, 30 years, the AP committee team, the group led by Ray Pershing, has actually announced a new AP certificate for modular model railroading. I mean, it's really a recognition that there are a significant percentage of modelers today, and especially younger modelers, that model using modular layouts. If you don't have a basement, if you don't have a home, large home, if you don't have space, modular is a great way to do model railroading. So I thought that was pretty exciting. At a personal level, you guys, I think, have seen the beat car I built. I took it to the convention up in Petaluma. I took that with one of the nice things about cars, and Dave can attest to this, is he's done it a number of times. One of the nice things about having a car is that you can actually take it with you to a convention. A structure is really hard to take on the plane. There's really no way to assure a structure, especially an O scale that's, a foot by 8 by 12 inches. How do you carry that on the plane? You certainly can't check it, and the odds of it getting destroyed in the process are really high. So the net is I actually took that car, and unfortunately, because it's not that complex, the award was not significant enough to win the prize for rolling stock. But I was very happy. I actually got the Awada Award, which is sponsored by the Awada company that makes their airbrushes for the most realistic rolling stock. So I personally was pretty excited about that. Then there was the National Train Show. The National Train Show actually sets up on Friday morning, Thursday and Friday morning. And then in the afternoon, it's open. It was open this year from 5 to 7 Friday afternoon for the attendees to the convention. So they get kind of exclusive early access to the National Train Show, an opportunity to walk around and see the vendors. There were many more vendors this year. The NMRA has been doing a very active outreach to vendors to get vendors to be more engaged with the NMRA, and you could really see the results of that at the convention. One of the things that's happened over the last few years is the Amherst Train Show, which is up in Massachusetts, run by the Amherst Railroad Society, has become a fairly significant event where a lot of vendors make announcements, have a large presence. They have a fairly large number of visitors, and has become kind of, I would say, a different venue to do those things versus the National Train Show, which was the traditional venue for that. And I think this year, due to the activities of some of the members of the NMRA board, the vendors really saw this as a major event, and it looked very well attended. You'll see that. I'm going to actually show a couple of videos here in a moment. And there were a lot of modular layouts. There was a number of clubs there from around the eastern part of the U.S. Again, they were able to make the trip there from as far away as Chicago and Detroit. And then there was a very large, you'll see, T-track layout that I don't know how many modules it had, but I think it was one of the largest they've ever done at a convention. Some pretty amazing modeling there. So what I thought I would do, I jump back to the wrong slide here, is I'm going to go ahead and play a video. This is a video of basically the vendor area. And so I think it's kind of an interesting view of what they were doing with the vendors. And this was done. I did this for New Tracks on Wednesday. We have the 7 o'clock East Coast, 4 o'clock West Coast meetup, and did this for that. So it's actually branded as New Tracks, but please ignore that. And here we go. because you never know what somebody's going to say. I put inoffensive music over it. But this was Bachman and Walters kind of at the front as you came into the event room. This was at the convention center there in Chattanooga. And I apologize, I forgot my gimbal, so I'm taking this just by holding my phone. So it's a little rambunctious. You can see Walters had a large booth. This was actually taken on Saturday, so the public was there. The people with the babies are actually not convention attendees. You can generally see the convention attendees because they'll have a green colored badge holder on. And you can see a number of familiar vendors there. And of course, then the back of the hall, there are all the modulars we'll see in the next little video. So what you tend not to have at this, just because I think the cost structure, they don't really, I don't think they sell tables as much as they sell booth areas. As you can see, it's kind of a, traditional, more trade show, 10-foot wide area of a booth. And so you don't tend to get a lot of people like you do at our great train shows, selling a lot of used equipment for low cost. You see a number of hobby shops that set up kind of a portable setup hobby shop there, and there's a tool company that sells tool products, etc. And there were some vendors selling books and some other things there, which was kind of nice. I thought the Lego play zone and the people selling Legos was good. And you'll see in the modulars that was reflected in some pretty cool Lego modular layouts. There were a number of the large kit manufacturers there, or mid-sized kit manufacturers there with displays and selling kits and detail parts. So it was a chance to stock up on some of those items as well. So that was basically, I hope that was interesting, a little bit about, kind of what was there. So the next video I have is actually the modular layouts. And I have to do a re-edit on this because I did not give credit to Joyce Hennessy's band, her bluegrass band. And I actually used one of their songs in this, and I was going to put a credit in it, and I forgot. So I will give her credit before I start it. So this is a video of the modular layouts, which I thought were quite amazing. The number of modular layouts that were there, and some of them were incredibly well done. Some of them were fairly simple. Let's start off with one of the Lego layouts. And there are a couple of these. You'll see there's a second one that's kind of even more amazing in terms of detail. But this was a fairly large, obviously a fairly large group of modelers. And while I think you can make the interesting argument, this is definitely not scale model railroading. From the interest of the children, it definitely got a huge amount of interest from young people seeing these layouts. And you can see the size of this. They're very large. Some of them are very large layouts. They had a fairly large area in the convention center to have the modular layouts. One of the things you really can see here is the different styles of modular layouts, from ones where there's a center area that's kind of closed off to ones like the one you're seeing here that basically is a big L shape but has backdrops for both sides of the modules. Some very well done modules on some of these layouts. This is they're from Corpus Christi, Texas, which, if you look on the map, is quite a little drive to get to Chattanooga. And I actually talked to one of their members. They said most of their modules live in trailers unless someone takes one home to do repairs or add to it. They live in a trailer and move the trailer to an event like this. Really a great place for granddads to be with grandchildren. This was actually the 3DP trains, their display. They're a 3D printing manufacturer. This is the Detroit, or actually this is the Chicago O-Scale Club. Their display. And this is the Detroit Model Railroad Club, and very much one of their members is president of O-Scale Central. So they're really promoting O-Scale. And this was a fairly small Lego layout, but the amount of detail in it was just amazing. What they had built and were setting up and showing in this little display area. This is actually trying to be a model of Disneyland here. And obviously gets a huge amount of interest from young people. This is interesting. The Caboose Mobile Motorhome Hotel. Motor Hotel. Like this mini golf course here. This was the huge T-track layout. Which included a number of organizations that came and set up. You can see a number of flying saucers as well. There are a few hard photos here of some of the clubs and some of the layouts. And The Lego station with a full interior. This was quite impressive, this harbor scene. Things I thought here was interesting was they use mirrors to extend that refinery complex. There's a little view, so it makes it seem much larger because of the mirrors. These are all T-track, obviously. So that's basically all I had there. Having said that, I will close with one little slide, which is, mark your calendars. August 10th to 15th, 2027 will be the Puget Sound Express. That's going to be in Tacoma, Washington at the Convention Center. And they will have great layouts. I was actually up there for the narrow gauge convention a couple of years ago, and the layouts were quite amazing that they have in the Seattle, Puget Sound, Tacoma area. And because the LD SIG is very strong, there will be, and the OPSIG, there will be operating sessions, there will be layouts open for the LD SIG tour, and clearly a lot of clinics. They have a very strong NMRA group up in the Pacific Northwest. So, one of the things to do is mark your calendar. I always think it's important to get these things on the calendar ahead of time so that you don't get them blocked by some family activity. Any comments or thoughts about that?
Yeah, Phil, did you get a chance to see anything, or did you view the whole convention from behind your cell phone?
Oh no, I got that. I just walked around. The only time, so I when I do video, go to conventions, I do two kinds of videos. I tend to do videos of layouts, which quite frankly, you kind of walk around and get a view of the layout, and then I take some pictures. Then I get to do a little bit of looking.
Hmm.
But for this convention at the National Train Show, I did that on Saturday. So when I was there on Friday, I basically did a lot of walking around and talking to people. And one of the other things that I'm doing, and I will probably next time we get together, I'll talk about this. The New Tracks mentoring group I'm part of on Wednesdays. We actually sponsor a scholarship program, which now has
Hmm.
been named after Jim Kello, another one of, unfortunately, our model railroaders who passed away recently. And this year we did four $2,500 scholarships. The PCR actually sponsored a scholarship a couple of years ago to that. So one of the things I was doing was spending a lot of time talking to vendors about potentially doing sponsorships for next year. I think it's really exciting to have scholarships for young people. So yeah, I got a lot of chance to go around, saw a lot of clinics, learned some fairly interesting techniques and things, and saw some great models and model railroads. So well worth going. And I'd really encourage, the great thing about Tacoma is there are two things that I think are exciting about Tacoma. If you drive, when I went up there a few years ago for the narrow gauge convention, I drove up. So basically, you can drive and you can stop in Eugene for the night. There's
Hmm.
some very reasonably priced hotels in Eugene, as long as you don't hit an event. Many years ago, my parents lived on the coast of Oregon and just by Tillamook. And my family, we all went up and we were driving up. We planned on stopping in Tacoma, and we went to the first hotel, the second hotel, the third hotel, no vacancy, no vacancy. Finally went to the Marriott and asked the person there what the heck's going on, and it turned out the Grateful Dead was playing in the stadium at the University of Oregon, and there
Yeah.
wasn't a hotel room available anywhere in the center of Oregon, even all the way up to Portland. So we ended up driving all the way through because we never could find a room at the end, so to speak. But normally what you can do is find a place. So it's a 2 day drive is not hard to get up there. And then, like I said, if you built a model, you can take a model up, put it in the celebration of models space and the contest. Alternatively, you can take the train up and
Hmm.
then find a way from the train station down to Tacoma. And there are different ways to get down there. So I think it'll be a pretty interesting convention next year. One of the few opportunities we have on the West Coast because about 2/3 of the convention, or maybe even 3/4 of the conventions happen, in the eastern part of the U.S. because it's just much larger concentration of people and organizations. So,
So, Phil, this is David Sampson. Uh,
hey, Dave.
Maybe you were at the convention the whole time, but how bad was the traffic in Chattanooga? I had talked to some people who go there frequently for vacations, and they said it's kind of at the zoo level.
So it turns out there's one freeway that runs through town that seemed like every time I saw that freeway, it was backed up forever. Turned
Yeah.
out for most of what I did never get on that freeway. I mean, I'd literally drive by and it would be stopped, but I would kind of go off in a different direction. So, mainly the times when you leave the convention is when you're going to layout tours,
Hmm.
or if you're going to a prototype tour. And I didn't find that the traffic was all that bad, but I did see it. I have to say that I guess this is that short-term memory thing now that I have. I don't remember what the number was, but it's one of the interstates, the interstate that runs through town. It turns out that there's a separate freeway that runs through the downtown area, and it was never very crowded.
Oh,
So,
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
By the Go ahead. I was going to say, by the way, you showed that picture of the Caboose Motel. And as I recall, there is a Caboose Motel in Strasburg, near Pennsylvania, near
yep.
the
Hmm.
TCA Museum. And every time I go there, every 4 or 5 years, I think, I ought to stay there. And then usually my partner says, I don't want to stay there. So we don't go.
Well, there's also one in Dunsmuir.
Oh,
Hmm.
really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one in Dunsmuir where it's actually related to the fact that the SP had a major servicing station, service facility at one point that serviced the locomotives that ran up the grades out of Reading up to Dunsmuir. And someone at some point created a caboose hotel up there. So it's on the west side of the freeway as you
Hmm.
go through Dunsmuir. The problem with staying there when you're going to Tacoma is it's a little too far this side of the middle of the
Mm.
halfway point. But I mean, you could do that. You could drive up there, leave and spend the night there, and then do the haul from there up to Tacoma the next day, or make it a more of a vacation. There's a lot of interesting things to see in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the video coverage was really nice, and I've put the Tacoma convention on my calendar. And somehow, after I made my entry, something else popped up. So it must be part of the magic of the internet. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'll drive up there
No,
next
I
year.
think it like I said, it's one of those things. If you haven't done it, it it's a good bucket list item. And this one, who knows, quite frankly, there are only three organizations in the Western U.S. until you go back to like Salt Lake, and they did one a few years ago. I think they did one. I want to say it was 2018 or 2019 in Salt Lake. I don't remember which year it was. But basically the Western organizations are either, the Pacific Northwest region, the Pacific Southwest region, or us. The Pacific Southwest did a convention 2 years ago. The Pacific Northwest is doing theirs next year. So it's kind of like if there's going to be a convention on the West Coast, it's probably up to us to do it sometime around 2030, 2031 timeframe. So this will probably be the last opportunity to go to a convention where you can either drive to it or take the train to it easily for at least 5 years. So it'd be great. I'll put something up at some point on the groups.io, and could have the advantage of if somebody's going to drive up and hook up with 2 or 3 people that take the train up and carpool, so you've got carpools to go look at layouts, do layout tours. That's really the biggest thing you need a car for, is to go to layout tours. It used to be layout tours were all by bus. That's kind of fallen away because it's so damned expensive to rent the buses. It's a huge expense for the convention committee to rent buses and try to set them up, and it's a lot of investment up front because you have to commit to hire the bus regardless of how many people sign up. So doing self-driving tours has become much more the way people do it. But if you look at the prototype tours, they're almost all bus-based. So the idea is if you're going to go on a train ride with one of the local trains in an area, you basically come to a space in the convention center at a certain time. They load everybody on buses and bus them to the place. So really the only thing you need a car for is to go to layout tours.
Thanks for taking the video. That was
oh, you're more than
almost...
welcome. I think it's one of those things that if you haven't experienced it, it's a way to
Phil?
experience a little bit of it.
Thanks.
Phil,
Yes.
one of the alternatives is to go up the east side of the Cascades and stop in Bend overnight.
That's true. And then you can go to, oh gosh, I want to pull a blank on the name of the city now, but where the large scale layout is, Train Mountain is over there. If you haven't been, if you go that side,
That's Klamath Falls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Near
you can
Klamath
stop there
Falls.
as well if you go over
North
that.
of Klamath Falls.
Yep, exactly. So there are lots of interesting things to do, and you could make it a vacation trip up there, and it is an area that a spouse would like to go to as well. So,
Hey Phil, question for do you know how they did that tornado scene?
I'm assuming based on what I saw there that what it was a stick connected to some sort of a motor-driven turntable that was underneath, that they'd wrapped cotton, some sort of cotton around and painted it with an airbrush, and it was spinning.
Yeah, and then they also had the clouds, though. They had the cloud formation on top too.
Yeah, they had the cloud, and I think probably it had a bearing at the top, and a motor on the bottom spinning and a bearing on the top holding it in place, and then the clouds on the top hit the upper support part. That's probably how I would do it. But it was pretty cool. I mean, one of the things that's neat about this is that as you walk around, you see things that give you great ideas for unique modeling, and a lot of it is kind of kitschy, might be the right word. But it really does excite the public to see those things. And you could see there were awful lot of, it's very different on Friday when it was all the convention attendees, and it's typically what you see is, for model railroads, just like we do on this video with folks. But on Saturday, the number of families with kids was just amazing, and it was incredibly crowded. So very packed, lots of attendance. Well, anyway, so that's really all I have. So I just throw it open for anyone to talk about any modeling projects they've been doing or any other activities that are coming up, and go from there.
Yeah, Phil, if you can make me a co-host, I've got a couple of slides to show, and I got to thank Ken Adams for part of the deal here.
You can share. You don't need to be a co-host, but I will make you a co-host, because if you're a co-host, you can mute people. So,
all right. So let me. Mhm. Okay, so what this is a project I've been working on for a while. It's an SP C30-1 caboose. The picture here basically shows the floor on the inside and also the underside of the body with it off of the chassis here. And the reason I'm showing this is just simply because I thought I wanted to light the markers. Given that this thing is never going to run on anybody's railroad, but it's going to sit on a display shelf, I had to be able to make the markers work with a battery. And so I figured out that I could get a AAA battery inside the seat box in the upper corner up here. And I made a switch out of some single or dual by cutting up a dual inline IC socket and another one here. And then I've got its mate will go in and out, and depending on which sets of two holes I plug together, it's either on or off. So that makes it real easy to take care of the battery item here. Okay, this is this is where Ken comes in. And these ladders on the end are ones that I ended up scratch building. The kit came with brass etchings to do the ladders, but I didn't understand it, and it looked like the ladder side rails were just too short for the model. Well, Ken came to the rescue after the last modeling on the coast session here, or meetup on the coast, and he sent me the SP drawings for how those ladders were constructed. And after I looked at those, it was really clear what was in the kit. At that point, I thought, well, do I really want to solder a bunch more ladders together or just use the ones that I already built? Well, I elected to take a shortcut and use the ones I'd already built, even though they aren't quite correct. So that's what we have here is those are the ladders that were scratch built, well, along with the rear railings and everything else on that. And then the last picture here is just the finished model with a little bit of light weathering. And so this was gadget here, and this completes the display train I have that sits on a cake rail up above the backdrop on my narrow gauge railroad. And that's just simply because I grew up along the SP, and if I wasn't doing the Rio Grande narrow gauge, I'd be doing SP standard gauge. So that's pretty much it, Phil.
Excellent, excellent, outstanding. I expect we'll see that in Tacoma next year, or maybe not.
I don't know. It's actually not that good of a model. It's I got it done, but there's just too many areas where I screwed up. I'd like to
Ah,
be able to do it over again, except that kit hasn't been made for 15 years, and I really don't want to scratch build it.
yeah, that is the challenge with things that you can't get anymore.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything interesting to show?
Starting on building a couple of the structure kits I've purchased recently. One from the estate sale of Bob Brown, which is this Amos Cutter general merchandise.
Hmm.
So it's a pretty nice craftsman kit. So nothing special there, but and then another one which is the Foss kits. One thing I like about the Foss kits is they have some techniques that I have not run across before, which is this one of them is this substance called it's like an acrylic substance you put underneath the paint, and then you hit it with a heat gun, and it crinkles the paint. It's like a crackle finish. It's kind of nice. So when I get some more, more details on that, I will probably put it together a little demonstration or something. So I have used
Excellent.
contact cement and things like that before for crinkle finishes, but this might be a bit more convenient.
Excellent. Excellent. We'll expect to see that. And I know Dave has put a clinic together about making those ladders, so we may ask him to come on one of our Saturdays and do that clinic. Kind of fun to put those up and have those in our clinics. I don't know if you've gone to the YouTube channel, there's a playlist and there's all of the e-clinics we've done since we started doing this back during COVID are up there. So
Another thing I was thinking about, I talked about briefly last week was last meeting was I was I have like a room in my condo complex where we can have guests and things like that. And
Mhm.
it's like a 10 or 20 by 30 room or something like that by the pool. And I was thinking we could probably do like either like a contest or something that is similar, like a modeling combined with contests or something like that. Because one thing is on I am contest chair in theory, but the problem is I cannot really travel that well nowadays. So I have to be, fairly close to home.
Yep.
So, if it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours away, it's like,
Where
so
you're in Newark, you're in
Mountain View.
Mountain View. Okay. Well, we're going to do an event, and I've got to finish setting it up in September at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. So, and Earl and I have always, typically at those said, we'll do a model event. I always think having a contest is too intimidating for folks. But having show your models, and one of the things the Red organization does is they do and I won't say, I don't quite know how to describe it. It's basically a show your model. But what you do is everybody gets up and they have a little time where everybody describes what they brought, and then they have a vote, and whoever is kind of the most popular gets a gift certificate, or I think it may actually be just $50 in cash. And what was interesting about it is I went up to one of the Red meetups where they did that, and I would say at least a third to half of the things that were shown were not models that were built recently. I remember one of the models was something that someone had built with their father 60 years ago, and they brought it to show it. So it was kind of, not about purely about the model itself, but the story that went with it about how that
Mhm.
came to be. So I'm going to talk to Earl. We may try to do something like that in September. I'm looking towards the end of September to have the meetup at the South Bay, kind of our South Bay meetup this year.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have it right now anyway, because the problem is that room is it's not air conditioned.
Yeah. Well, and
So
if you
right now the
haven't
weather's beautiful, but the problem is who knows next month.
well, and if you haven't been to one of the meetups, we've done these about 3 years, 4 years now. We've done the Golden State Model Railroad Museum in February, and the South Bay Railroad Historical Society in September. And those are kind of our two,
Mhm.
get-togethers, have clinics, have some model, celebrations.
Yeah, I
Um,
usually make it to those actually, because it's relatively nearby and I can actually take the train to it.
yep, and absolutely, you can get to it by the train. You know, it's a good place. Their facility's nice. They actually have a nice facility in the front. That's the main room. They also have a back facility they call the boardroom, which is small. And one of the things, by the way, I'm going to be trying to look for is we don't have a clinic chair. I do need it. We do need a clinic chair, someone to step up and take on clinics. But one of the things I like to do is have some more detailed clinics. I know, we've had a soldering clinic, some weathering clinics. It'd be nice to have something. One of the things we could even do is a build-along at clinic. If someone wanted to have a specific model and do a build-along, because you basically can have the whole morning. We could start at 9 o'clock and go 9 o'clock to noon, so you get 3 hours to do a build-along of a model. So if anybody's interested in talking to you about doing something like that, it'd be great to set that up. So we have it set up ahead of time. You can start advertising it, and people can order or sign up to get the kit to be done as the build along. So that reminds me, I need to go finish setting that date up. So another task. So is anyone going to the narrow gauge convention in Minnesota? Dave, are you going up to
No, I'm
Minnesota?
not, Phil. Several guys from the group are going, but that kind of travel is still out of bounds for me. So
Uh,
we're homebound on that.
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have started, and very much at the insistence of my wife, wearing a mask on the plane.
Hmm.
It seemed like there for about 3 years, every time I took a plane flight, I got COVID.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you kind of got to be careful on a plane. Just they say they filter the air, but the problem is if you're sitting in a seat, there's an air pattern in the cabin,
Hmm.
and it seems like sometimes it blows past somebody and blows over at you. I always remember there was something an article I read early on about a restaurant in Wuhan where somebody had COVID and the air conditioner was blowing across them, and they showed the 8 people in the restaurant who all got COVID from them, and I think that's what happened to me a few times on planes. So I fully understand that.
Yeah.
That's why doing things close are great. And I hope everybody saw that the PCR convention is going to be in Reno next
Hmm.
year over the April 1st weekend. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's a great area up there. It's at I think it's Atlantis Casino. It's the one on the south end of Reno. They have a big convention facility. Lots of great prototype activities,
Hmm.
railroad prototype activities in that area. And they're actually, interesting enough, for a lot of layouts. It seems like there are a lot of Californians that moved to that part of Nevada because they could get a house and build their big dream layout. So there's some great layouts to go see. And have obviously some great clinics and a real opportunity to meet everyone. And of course, that's one of those great places to take the train to, because you can
Hmm.
just take the Zephyr up and jump off in Reno, and it's a day trip. You can ride the Zephyr up as a day trip. You don't have to spend overnight, because the overnight part of the Zephyr is from Reno out to just past Salt Lake.
Hmm.
So
All I can say is living in Sparks, finally a convention in my backyard.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's great for you guys. We had a long discussion, and one of the things that is a thought process, and it's not a secret, is this is kind of a bit of a dry run to see if we could, as an organization, do a national convention there. One of the challenges is I'm just not sure we can do a national convention in the Bay Area. I think it's going to be really hard to do the PCR convention in the Bay Area next year, or year after next. It'll be 28. But definitely a national convention here, with the size of the hotels and facilities you need to rent. The rental rates here are just astronomical. And it's going to be, I think, a real challenge to get something that is cost effective to be able to have a national convention. So doing something in Reno could be a really interesting place to have a national convention. David, that'll probably appeal to you a lot if it's close like that. That's practically a day trip for you, or not a
Yeah.
day trip, a commute trip for you.
An hour, a 30-minute trip, even.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we
and
do have some,
that,
I was going to say, we do have some great layouts. And one of the nice things that PCR does, probably most of you know this, but in the fall, I think that's maybe like November, we have an annual layout tour set up. And
Hmm.
it basically goes all the way from Reno down to, I think we even go as far south as Dayton. And it's become a 3-day affair. And it's definitely worthwhile. We have some great modelers out here, and if you've never seen it before, you have to see Jim Petro's layout, which is absolutely off the scale. And then there's another layout, and I forget the name of the owner in South Reno, which is unbelievable. He had kind of a modest objective. He wanted to model SP from Reno to where did he go? I think Oakland. And I mean he's got stuff in his layout that's unbelievable. Like I guess in Roseville, they used to have an ice house there. So he built a third scale ice house. Well, he compressed it in length, and the darn thing is still 10 or 12 feet long. It's unbelievable.
Hmm.
Absolutely. No, it's great because you do have, space, not necessarily for basements, but also potentially for an outbuilding or a little bit more space in your house up there in that area. So I think that'll be fun. That's probably good to mark your calendar for. Go check on the website. I'll put something in about that as well next time we
And
get
if you've
together.
never seen it, the museum in Carson City is absolutely worth
Yep.
a visit. They've
Mhm.
got a really nice McKean car there. If you've never ridden
Mhm.
in a McKean car, my only reservation would be that they took I don't know, maybe when they bought it, the Whitcomb was already gone, and the car itself had been incorporated into some roadside diner, and they rescued it and brought it back, and I think the Whitcomb may have been MIA at that point, so they put a cat, and it's very reliable. It's a nice museum, and then maybe they'll be smart and they'll get something organized, because to take the private railway line that it starts just outside of Carson City, that goes up to Virginia City.
Yep.
That is absolutely a worthwhile ride as
Mhm.
well.
Well, and that is one of the cool things about a convention is a lot of times they talk to local organizations like that and do something unique that you can only do at the convention. That a dinner train, some sort of a special event train, or that kind of thing, or a steam, or normally a train might be pulled by a diesel. They'll set up to have it be pulled by a steam engine for the event for the convention. So you have to kind of keep an eye on that as they begin to advertise that and get that put in place. And that's being done by the Sierra Division, obviously, which
Right.
includes the northern Nevada area. So yeah, no, I think that'll be fun. And again, it'll be, it's a great opportunity to get folks together and go up on the train. And if you get 3 or 4 people together, go up on the train and rent a car, it becomes pretty reasonably cost effective. So. Well, I tell you what, I think we probably just that moment of awkward silence is kind of an indication we've come to the end of a discussion. I hope everybody had fun today. Like I said, it was great for me last weekend going to the convention, and hope everybody has a great couple of weeks. And we will plan on getting together in 2 weeks, and see if maybe I can convince Dave to come in and do a clinic on building caboose ladders. I have to go see that. One of the I am now working on cars. My AP certificates. I needed 2 more, and one of them is now going to become the modular certificate, which I think I'm pretty good on. But I have to do either cars or locomotives, and I'm going to do cars. And one of the cars you have to do a passenger car, so I have a
Mhm.
Bachmann side door combine caboose, which has passenger seating, and so it qualifies as a passenger car carrying people. And the ladders on it, quite candidly, are grotesque. So I wanted to look at Dave's clinic and find out how to make some great ladders to get those little bit of scratch build and
Mhm.
repurposing points to be able to get a reasonable award on that car. So Dave, I'll send you an
Yep.
email and see if you can do that. Hey, and by the way, if someone has a clinic you've done in the past and would like to come on and do it on a Saturday, just send me an email.
Yep.
We'll set up. You can send me your PowerPoints. I'll re-edit them up and send them back, and you can come on and do a clinic. And the nice thing about if you do a clinic on here, they all end up as an e-clinic up on
Mhm.
the Coast Division YouTube station or channel. So something you can reference to and give to people. One of the things I do, by the way, I did again at the NMRA convention, the clinic I did a while back on using PowerPoint and modeling.
Mhm.
And whenever I do that clinic, one of the things I do is I add in a slide that has the link to the Coast Division YouTube channel for that clinic, and say, if you want to go back and see something that you can't remember exactly how I was talking about or what I did, because it goes pretty fast, it's a great way to refer back to it. So, because that's one of the advantages of doing this on Zoom. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Hope everything goes well.
14.
All right. Thank you, Phil, for sharing those videos. They're great.
They were
You're
great.
more than welcome. And everybody take care of yourself. We're not going to allow anyone else. I'm losing Frank as the last person I want to lose this year. I'm going to be really mad at anybody else who doesn't stick around for the whole year. So you guys have a good one. Thanks again. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.